Toji versus Mahito? Interesting. What's up, guys? I'm here, and we're going to do a breakdown / live reaction and review to Six's Toji versus Mahito is so unfair. And I'm very, very interested in the hypothetical outcome of this possible battle that we're going to be getting into. Mainly because I do think it's very, very unfair. I think it's extremely unfair. I think it's darn near a mismatch, if not flat out a mismatch. No, it is. It just is a mismatch. It is horrible. I can't believe that Six would do my boy Mahito, the third, maybe second, honestly, based on writing, like character interaction, second best villain in JJK like this. I can't believe he would do this. But I'm very interested to see what Six has to say. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
The disaster.
What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. Here's the thing about Toji versus Mahito specifically as a matchup. Like a matchup of the ages. A battle that everyone wants to see. That top of the line, the next level juicy, scrumdiddlyumptious stuff that really just has the toes curling like nothing else. It's awful because Mahito's stats are just that bad. Now here's the thing. Mahito doesn't necessarily have bad stats. He doesn't have awful stats. He doesn't have like negative, atrocious, in the ground, garbage stats, like the kind of stats you don't even want to see on a character. But like in comparison to Toji, the stat difference is way too massive. Because here's the thing, right? The highest, and I mean the highest, you can get, the strongest variation of Mahito we've ever seen is 10% Yuji Soul. I'm kidding. But like a end of Shibuya Yuji. That's the highest you can get Mahito. And then, based on Choso's statements about Yuji after the fact, Yuji only gets stronger after that battle and starting to heal up, and then he gets stronger after that when he's fully healed. And like, unless you want to do some weird roundabout argument to say that Yuji is faster than Toji, I don't think you can really do that. Like, not for real. And here's another thing about that. It'd be one thing if it was just like a stat difference, right? Because, you know, stat differences in regards to Mahito may not matter all too much. We've seen characters who are strong enough to harm Mahito, or even stronger physically than Mahito, struggle to harm him because of the whole soul manipulation thing, right? Because, you know, he has idle transfiguration, meaning he's basically immortal, immune. There's nothing anybody could do to our glorious, accursed... Here's the thing, though. If you don't remember, Toji can see souls. Like, he can see souls, verbatim. That is the prerequisite for using the Soul Split Katana. Of course, this is not a katana, nor a Soul Split, but regardless, it is the prerequisite for using that variability. Toji can see souls. Meaning that he could just damage Mahito with his regular hits. Like, he could actually punch and kick Mahito to the end. Just like Yuji did. If he really needed to. But here's the thing, he doesn't have to because he legit has Soul Split Katana. Soul Split Katana actively attacks the soul. It skips over traditional durability and directly attacks the soul. The main thing that Mahito cannot survive against. Womp womp. And here's the thing, right? If you think that isn't enough, let's say for some reason or other you believe that Soul Split Katana, despite being explicitly noted to attack the soul and bypass the durability of souls even to the level of Ryomen Sukuna, the character who as far as we know has the strongest soul in the entire series by leaps and bounds, he has the inverted spear of heaven. You know the thing that turns off curse techniques? Forcibly. So all he needs to do is hit Mahito and then beat him down. If you think the soul perception that he just is confirmed to have, and then Soul Split Katana, which he also is confirmed to have, inverted spear of heaven. Mops him. Horrifically. Like, I'm sorry, Mahito just has nothing. And the thing is, it's not like Toji's lacking behind in raw physical power either. If Toji's able to mollywop and whack around creatures like Ryomen Sukuna, even a heavily fatigued Ryomen Sukuna, based on what Maki does in the manga, and they're equal, like, it's just not. It's not. I personally do not see any way Mahito wins this matchup. Because remember, even domain expansions don't work. So whether you want to believe in the 0.2 second domain, whether you want to believe in the brain, the full power domain, anything, it don't work. And also, Mahito's just never even tagging Toji because of the massive speed gap, half because of Toji's literal raw stats. They're able to confuse the 6 eyes, and also the precog. Nothing Mahito does is going to work. I'm sorry, I don't see it. This violent mismatch. This video came out 4 months ago, though. But even then, 4 months ago, that's sort of this year. So, like, or like late last year. I still don't think by that point in the manga there's any arguments for Mahito. He is literally hard countered the worst by Toji and Maki in particular. Arguably Toji more because he has 3 ways to get rid of him: an invert spear, regular soul hitting, and soul split. Meanwhile, Maki has just regular soul perception and soul split. The stat difference, the ability difference, and the immunity to the matchups are insane. And we already know that hypothetically, let's say somehow Mahito does land a punch, or a touch, or a tickle where he gets Toji in places where he shouldn't be touching Toji. Regardless of all of that, guess what? Toji's body is noted to be especially weirdly resistant to curses, which is what Mahito is. And also we've seen Toji override soul hacks before. Like, remember when his body data was meant to be summoned, but his body data was so strong it actually broke a curse technique? Yeah, Mahito's not doing anything. But let's see what 6 has to say, because that thumbnail was leaning towards Mahito, but something tells me, on the bottom of my heart, it smells like bait. But let's see.
Curse born of humans versus the literal definition of a superhuman within Jujutsu Kaisen. Today we're talking about Mahito versus Toji. All things considered, this matchup is pretty fun to discuss, even though for the most part it's horribly one-sided. Both of
That's the thing, right? And this is the big thing in JJK matchups in particular. If you have a bad matchup, you lose. And it's very hard to argue around that. Like, notably, I'm in the camp that in a lot of other series, you can definitely argue regardless of matchups. Some characters may be able to pull out crazy dubs using a very specific ability. But, like, in JJK, if you fail the stat check and it's a bad matchup, you lose. You lose. Like, there are characters who sometimes get close to overcoming a stat check with some of their matchup capability. Like, Yuki versus Kenjaku is a fantastic example of they have really solid matchups with each other, but their respective abilities cancel out, and Kenjaku had a superior ability in the barrierless domain. But, like, things like Toji versus Mahito, or hypothetically, like, I don't know, Toji versus any of the disaster curses, where they just all failed the stat check. Or, I don't know, something like Yuji versus any character, any grade 1, or stuff like that. Like, there's so many different things where, whether it be due to matchups or be due to stat gaps in JJK, battles become one-sided. I do think ultimately aspects of the back half of the series have juiced and jacked up so many characters that mid-series to early series characters like Mahito just don't really stand a chance. I think Mahito, you would have to make weird arguments to keep him in top 15 at this point, which I know sounds crazy to some people. I know it sounds absolutely insane. I'll make a video going more in depth on that. But just off of the domer, naming 15 characters stronger than Mahito: Gojo, Sukune, Itadori, Yorozu, Kenjaku, Yuta, Maki, Toji, Ryu, Uro, Curse Naoya. Though Curse Naoya would probably have a weird... That had to be like a domain for domain. They'd have to go band for band on that one. I mean, arguably, you could put Jogo up there too, which is crazy. But... And then there are some characters who just are slipping the mind right now. But a bunch of characters kind of do give Mahito that work now, even with his broken technique, because he just doesn't have the stats. The stats really let him down here, and that's a big thing. But let's see what 6 says is so one-sided, but apparently makes an interesting matchup. Let's see.
these characters are significantly downplayed, and mainly for the ways they lost, instead of talking about what they've actually accomplished outside of that. Mahito is on the larger receiving end of this because a lot of people don't take into consideration that he's at an extreme disadvantage when fighting against someone like Yuji, because he can't use his curse technique on him due to Sukuna's interference.
And I do agree, right? But here's, I guess, because it's really the different sides of the community, I still consistently, to this day, hear Mahito slop, Mahito glaze, Mahito top 10, Mahito top 5. No one beats Mahito's domain expansion. I keep hearing things like that. To this day. But, like, I don't see it. I think too many characters get introduced that can either see the soul, or could be implied to see the soul, and or have domains of their own that would mollywop Mahito. My goat Ryu Ishigori slams Mahito. Uro could arguably slam Mahito. So many characters end up slamming Mahito because even with that massive disadvantage, because that's true. Six brings up a fantastic point in the idea that Mahito is not necessarily able to go all out against Yuji, because Yuji's literally immune to his main tech. Even with that being the case, even with that immunity to the main tech, his stats are still relative to that Yuji. And unfortunately, that Yuji, in the grand scheme of things, just isn't that impressive. And every other thing that Mahito accomplishes is either sneaky or on fodder or both. Realize, outside of Yuji, Mahito fights randoms. And, fights, I mean, he had one slight interaction with Satoru Gojo, which obviously he doesn't scale to. And he got a bunch of regular humans. Ooh. And then who? Nobara? Who was kind of low-key mollywopping his clone, and then he had to sneak. And Nobara honestly isn't that powerful. And he super fatigued Nanami. Mahito just doesn't have that. At least in the grand scaling scheme of things. He doesn't have nothing. And it's unfortunate that Gege ended up nerfing... Well, not necessarily, because you can kind of see it in the manga, too. But just by saying that the inverted spirit... The true form Mahito... By saying that was just a toughness boost, you can't even make any vague arguments about oh, well, maybe it was actually more than just a toughness boost. No, Gege verbatim confirms it's just a 200% defense boost. At the lack and loss of all his versatility. That's whack. But
Toji gets downplayed for losing to Awakened Gojo's Hollow Purple of all people, but regardless, who of these two would come out on top when put up against each other? That's exactly what I'm going to go over here today, and I'm going to start with Mahito since I've talked about Toji at length more.
Okay, yeah, he does have a couple Toji videos. More than I do want to react to. He has 3 Toji versus Yuta videos. I'm probably going to react to the latest one, though, because notably the further you go back in the timeline, the less feats that both of them have, and the weirder it gets. So I'll probably go with the most recent Toji versus Yuta video that I saw from 6. But... yeah, Toji, I feel like a lot of people sleep on Awakened Teen Gojo. Don't get me wrong, I do agree, there's definitely arguments for him being a domain victim, but, considering how fast he is, how damaging his attacks are, and the fact that he does have Hollow Purple in his kit, I feel like he gets a lot farther than most people give him credit for. He's still crazy, and, not just legitimately crazy, but, actually crazy in terms of scaling. His feats are just that good. And also, he does have a domain counter. Whether he has simple domain at that point is debatable, but we know he learned... the think after 500 years Falling Blossom motion. He does have that. So some domains he doesn't get domain diff by everybody, and he still has enough speed and power and raw stats to do crazy things. And once again, that's a rusty Toji, dog. Look at my goat Maki in the manga right now. Everything is equivocated. Remember, even after the time skip, Toji stated equal to Maki, and Maki stated equal to Toji in the most recent updated character stuff. I'll see if I can find that so I can talk about that more in depth, because it's still true in spite of the month of training, which makes sense. Once again, I think a lot of people are just expecting Maki to get stronger over the month time skip and surpass Toji, but they were put at the limit of human potential, for one, and for two, they just can't get stronger in the way that the characters do. They can't. They don't have cursed energy reinforcement and stuff like that. So I think they're kind of stat capped, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but they can only get better skill-wise. And once again, Maki just unfortunately hasn't really shown much of that skill boost.
Multiple times now. Before we begin, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more JJK versus battles like this one. Mahito as a curse is truly on a different level than any of the other ones, and in many ways could have been the next Sukuna. All the disaster curses show love.
Here's my thing though about that, and I'll cover this real quick. I don't think that's true. I really don't think Mahito could have been the next Sukuna. Never. Never, ever, ever, ever. Never, ever, 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 ever. Mainly because, he's a curse. I know a lot of people think Sukuna's a curse, but he's not. He's a dude. He's like an actual person. He took some aspects of curses, like the maligned form and the multiple arms, stuff like that. He's curse-like in appearance, but Sukuna isn't a curse. He's a sorcerer. It's why he uses RCT and doesn't just restore himself through cursed energy. And you need to be a sorcerer. Sorcerers inherently scale above curses. And unless Mahito suddenly developed the human body, unless he suddenly became a real boy, he was never going to reach Sukuna's level. At least in my opinion. He never had the possibility. He couldn't even access curse technique reversal. Because he couldn't ever have RCT, because he's a curse. So he'd be stuck without transfiguration. And at least from what the narrative implies, true form Mahito is his limits. He peaked. And he peaked pretty low, being completely honest. So I get the narrative sets him up as like the next Sukuna, and a lot of people see him as the next Sukuna, but I don't know. I personally just don't see the vision on that one. I've yet to, just because of how poor his stats are relative to the back half of the series. I believe in the first half his stats are still fantastic, and also just his peak seeming extremely low. But maybe I'm just a Mahito down player, which wouldn't surprise me. But that's the thing, I love Mahito as a character, so I'm shocked I'd be considered a Mahito down player. But look in the mirror, find out new things
for one another. Jogo is pretty distraught when both Hanami and Dagon die, but when Mahito learns Hanami died, he doesn't really care. Couple this fact with Mahito's extreme rate of growth, and the things Sukuna was saying to Gojo start to make more and more sense. Humans flocking together, curses flocking together, comparing themselves to those around them, leads to weakness and stunts growth. Mahito isn't one to be restricted by such things. He enjoys fighting, and preaches the benefit of enjoying it to Hanami. And when we see Hanami apply these things in his fight with Todo and Yuji, not only does his Jujutsu and curse technique potential expand, he himself gets stronger as a result of unrestricting his soul. Mahito plays with the lives of others and does so for the sole purpose of evolving. Wanting to break Yuji's soul by dragging the corpse of his friend in front of his face and succeeding, he's rewarded with a black flash. Mahito took inspiration from the strongest sorcerer and opened a 0.2 second domain to get the upper hand on a far stronger opponent.
One thing I do want to talk about, and this is something I'll definitely go over when I do like a Mahito optimal video, because I am planning to do a couple more of those. That first Gojo optimizing himself to the Gojo was fun. I'm probably gonna slide that over to some more characters. Mahito's gonna be one of them, but I feel like a lot of people kind of, I'm not gonna say overhype, but kind of do overhype the 0.2 second domain. Y'all do realize like it's something he would never use on anybody else except for Yuji. The only reason he did the 0.2 second domain there was because he was scared of Sukuna. Unless other characters are randomly holding Sukuna at that point, he's never using the 0.2 second domain. And honestly, the 0.2 second domain isn't really that good. If if Todo was able to symbol domain and only get his hand got before the domain shut down, how do you think the numerous characters faster than Todo, whether you're talking Isidori or Kusakabe or any of the special grades or any of the Sendai sorcerers or heck Karushi, like how many other characters do you think are going to be able to react in time? Kanashima, Hokari, like I feel like so many characters would be able to react to the 0.2 second domain with some sort of domain counter. Admittedly, like Falling Blossom Motion wouldn't work because it's a complex domain hit, but I don't know, I feel like the 0.2 second domain gets massively overrated in terms of its potency because it doesn't actually do much. Like it's something I don't see him pulling out in character. That's the big thing. Because unless you're including him like a later Yuji versus battle where he's still wary of Yuji having Sukuna, who could still one-shot Mahito, I don't ever see him doing this. Just like when Gojo did the 0.2 second domain in Shibuya, that wasn't meant to be a thing that's like, oh wow, this is crazy, he can do 0.2 seconds. That's the speed and direction and crazy next level. It's an impressive domain feat because he folds the two-step process into one. But even then, that two-step process was still slow enough that Todo couldn't react in time and then chop off his own hand because not all of him was God. So, I don't know. I see the 0.2 second domain is overrated, but what do you think? Do you still think it's cracked? Do you still think he'd use it outside of battling Yuji in particular? Personally, I don't think so. I think it's a little bit overgassed.
Take for example the opposite situation happening to Jogo, who was too scared to open his domain, scared he would lose in a clash. Mahito powers through and is rewarded for it with yet another black flash, broadening his understanding of his curse technique once again and letting him reach his final form or the true essence of his soul. This is all stacked on top of the fact that Mahito has an extremely overpowered curse technique. His ability to maintain the shape of his soul makes the normal "I'm going to hit him really hard" tactics virtually useless against him. Just like he says to Todo, it doesn't matter how strong your attack is, using Black Flash has no effect if you can't hit my soul. There are ways to counter this ability, and we'll get into that in a second, but where Mahito's curse technique really shines is his ability to transfigure other souls with the touch of his palm.
That's one, I was talking to Flame about this. Yeah, don't be shocked if a collab drops sometimes. Well, I was talking to Flame about this. It's crazy. And I think actually he brought it up. So this credit goes to Eternal Flame on this one. Check out his channel. What do you think about it? Mahito's whole special soul immunity thing is super JJK specific. Like, think of numerous other franchises. Soul perception is not that uncommon. And soul interaction isn't even that uncommon. Like, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure all the big three have some sort of soul perception. I don't know enough about One Piece. So One Piece may be off the table. But Dragon Ball arguably has soul perception and soul interaction, and Seven Deadly Sins has it, and Boruto has it, and just a bunch of different series has it. So it's crazy to think that JJK puts so much emphasis on the rarity of soul perception when it's like a common trait in other universes. So it's why Mahito doesn't translate well. If you ever wonder why you rarely see Mahito, like, dragged cross-verse, and just because of his stats being whack, but it's also because, like, his main weakness is way more accessible. It's a big reason why I don't think he's too viable in the back half of the series, too, because his main weakness is also really easily accessible, whether it be through domain expansions or actually just being two souls, or, like, being a dual-souled being.
In the extended application of this technique when he activates his domain expansion. In chapter 22 and 23, we get pretty good details on Mahito's curse technique during his fight with Nanami. The soul or the body, which do you think came first? Does the soul dwell in the body, or is the body built on the soul? Nanami answers wrongly here, saying the former, but Mahito corrects him, saying the soul should always exist before the body. The shape of the body will always be dependent on the shape of the soul. I'm not healing, instead I'm reinforcing the shape of my soul. My curse technique can touch and reshape the soul. So where normal curses would have to heal their body when an arm is broken off or suffering a giant injury, Mahito doesn't spend curse energy healing. He instead makes his body conform to the shape of his soul so it never takes any real damage. Hence what I said earlier when he says to Todo, if you don't hit my soul, there is no effect. There are some other interpretations in the series about how souls work, mainly Kenjaku, who disagrees with Mahito, saying the soul comes before the body and says instead that the soul is the body, which I largely disagree with, mainly just because Mahito should be far more of an expert on this stuff considering his curse technique and experimentation he's done thus far, on top of the soul being visualized to us numerous times in the manga and it looking nothing like anyone's body we've seen.
That is true. I'll give that. The thing is, though, Kenjaku should be, like, the second most knowledgeable right behind Mahito. He is the one who came up with the whole turning souls into cursed object type thing. Like, that is true. And here's the thing. Going by Mahito's interpretation, it kind of is the same thing as Kenjaku's interpretation. Because the shape of the soul, while it is portrayed in, like, weird forms in Mahito's hands, its shape still ends up determining the shape of the body. And thusly, the body should still have impacts on the soul if pieces of the body are lost. But I suppose you could say the soul acts as the blueprint. Meanwhile, the body is the application of the blueprint. Like, technically, I could see it, and I think it's how Mahito sees it. In JJK, the soul is the design for a building. You can break off a piece of that building, but as long as the initial design itself isn't broken, you can rebuild a part of that building through stuff like RCT or external healing and stuff like that. Meanwhile, if you have something like Soul Split Katana, or, I don't know, Soul Perception, you can actively damage the blueprint of the building that you're striking, which would be the body.
On the flip side of that particular argument, though, we do see both Yuji and Sukuna's souls, and Yuji's looks like him, and Sukuna's for some reason looks like Yuji's. They seem like weird outliers for this, though, or rather exceptions to the rule rather than debunking it. Beyond this, though, Mahito can still transfigure the shape of his soul, but doing so may result in more damage being done to that specific part of his soul if he's fighting someone strong, so he doesn't normally opt to do it against someone around his level like Yuji. The things he can turn his body into are pretty strong at certain points. He can grow horse legs to move faster, he can amplify his fists with whatever this is and hit harder, and he can even make sharp weapons out of his own hands. On top of this though, Mahito normally keeps a stockpile of transfigured humans on him to use in combat. Fair to say that those would be standard equipment for him. With these he can make random goon monsters to fight for him, or even use his arm like an automatic weapon and fire little transfigured people at you. Now, even with Mahito having this extremely overpowered curse technique, there are still counters to it, but we'll start first with Yuji Itadori, since he is Mahito's self-proclaimed natural enemy. Yuji is a vessel for Sukuna, and we saw in chapter 11 that Yuji and Sukuna's souls can interact with each other inside of Sukuna's innate domain, or in other words, Yuji can perceive the soul. Mahito attributes this to the fact that Yuji simply has the necessary requirements to see the soul, having another soul dwelling within his body. This same reason is why Yuji can fight Mahito without worrying about his curse technique. Because of Sukuna being within Yuji's body, if Mahito tries to transfigure Yuji's soul, he's by proxy transfiguring Sukuna's soul, which Sukuna doesn't like, so he'll harm or unalive Mahito if it happens. This same sentiment you can extend to all of the reincarnated players in the Culling games. They were turned into cursed objects and put into a vessel that they had control over, so they naturally have these other souls dwelling in their body and should thus be able to harm Mahito's soul if they fought him. But by this time,
that's the big thing. Yep, that's the big thing about Mahito being heavily nerfed by the back half of the series. He still definitely does beat some characters. Like, I think it's pretty much impossible to argue that someone like Reggie beats Mahito, right? Because, like, Reggie's scaling is garbage. But with that being the case, one thing that Itadori has over any of the incarnated sorcerers, though, they don't have the immunity to IT. They can still be affected by it. Mahito can still use full domain and still grab them and everything. The main reason, it goes back to what he was mentioned earlier, Sukuna and Itadori are weird outliers in terms of their soul strength and soul power and soul manipulation. They're like weird. Not necessarily their soul manipulation, that does seem to be something that anyone can learn. Look at Kenjaku teaching Sukuna, Kenjaku learning it by himself, and obviously Yuji learning it, and Yuki having the information to know how to do it. So, like, it's not impossible, but none of the, if you want to do matchups with like Mahito against certain colonies, they aren't immune to IT in the same way that Yuji is, because of how they don't have Sukuna in particular. They just have a random human, someone completely random that doesn't necessarily feed into any of their base abilities and stuff like that. So it's not horrid for Mahito, but the main thing that's cracked about Mahito isn't actually really his offense, to be completely fair. It's mainly his quote-unquote infinite defense, but when he doesn't have that defense, he kind of, I'm not going to say he folds, but he doesn't, yeah, he folds.
Mahito is already long gone anyway. Another con to this is domain expansion or simple domain. Mechamaru uses a simple domain in order to damage Mahito.
It is wild to think that Kusakabe low diffs Mahito. I'm not kidding. If he does that same thing he did to Sukuna in the recent chapters, in what, 255? Nope, 254. He genuinely low diffs Mahito. Put that in your mind, bruh. Put that in your mind. Kusakabe actually no diffs Mahito. I want y'all to argue simple domain works against Mahito because it turns off his curse technique. Bro's cooked. He loses immediately. He literally gets perception blitz, torn to ribbons, and can't even activate his domain in time. He's a victim. He's literally a Kusakabe victim. Put that image in your head, live with it, cry as I did. Well, I didn't really cry. I was actually low-key happy with that. So we can kick Mahito even further down the
soul during their fight. And when being given the explanation by Kenjaku, we learned that domain expansion would have the same effect, which makes sense considering domain expansion is just way better than simple domain. You can also counter Mahito by just being strong. He mentioned that he can't one-shot Nanami, and we see that. And then we also know that some souls are just resistant to his curse technique naturally. Like he says against Yuji and Todo, the souls with weak rejection come together to form one body, which obviously implies that there are souls with stronger rejection. Adding to this, Mahito wonders if he can end Todo in one touch in the state he's in after being weakened by Nobara and a black flash from Yuji. For the last thing to talk about, we have to consider Mahito's domain expansion, although this won't be too relevant for reasons I'll state later pertaining to Toji. But Mahito's domain is real simple anyway. He just expands his curse technique so he doesn't have to lay a hand on you in order to transfigure your soul. So all in all, there are a few ways to counter Mahito's technique. 1. Be strong, or at least have a strong soul. 2. Being able to both perceive and hit the soul. 3. Not getting caught in his domain expansion. And 4. Simple domain or your own domain expansion. Luckily for
he's about to say it, but I want to say it first. Toji literally has access to 3 of the 4 ways to beat Mahito. Do you see why this is a mismatch?
Toji, he falls into the categories of 1, 2, and 3. So let's go through them one at a time. 1. Be strong, or at least have a strong soul. Toji falls into this category for very obvious reasons. He's obviously very strong, far stronger than Yuji and Shibuya or Todo, and his body literally beats souls, and doesn't even need a soul to operate. In Shibuya, when summoned by the Seance Granny, Toji describes that his body beat her grandson's soul. This is important because Granny mentions that she didn't summon any of Toji's soul information, and that she only summoned the physical information, but Toji's body is special. Given the fact Toji's body can operate and function without his soul, I'd say his body being built on the soul like Mahito thinks is just simply wrong, and transfiguring his soul won't result in Mahito transfiguring his body. And that's if he could even get it off. On top of Toji being faster, which I'll get into in a minute, there are a couple of other factors to consider when going over the scenario. One is Toji's curse resistance. 244 chapters into the story, and we still haven't been given an exact description on this, but there are hints sprinkled throughout the series. In chapter 144, Yuki mentions how Maki survived Jogo's fire attack not because of her curse resistance, but rather her own physical toughness. This at the very least implies that curse resistance could lessen the damage or impact of cursed techniques or cursed energy. In chapter 77, Yuki says despite not having cursed energy, Toji Zenin was able to sense curses using his 5 senses. By eliminating all cursed energy, his body became sharpened to the point where he developed a resistance to curses. He was truly superhuman. This one implies the same thing really, that Toji can resist curses because of his sharpened body. This is to the extent that Toji can actually swallow a curse and no bad come of it. He can just spit it back up whenever he wants. In chapter 151, during Naoya and Maki's fight, it stated that Maki can now see through projection sorcery because of the body she gained, which allows her to properly counter the technique. The last example of this I want to mention comes from Shibuya, where as soon as Toji recognizes Megumi, he immediately regains control of his body and unalives himself. The narrator dialogue that follows is cut from the anime, but it says, "A heavenly gifted body strong enough to overwrite the soul." For him, even this out of control curse technique wasn't. Wasn't meaning it wasn't out of control, by the way. I know some people I talked to were confused about that since it seems like the sentence just stops. But there are some of the ways of Toji's curse resistance. I'll go over another major one.
It's why I'm really hesitant to give Yuta a dub with just curse speech alone. You know what I'm saying? Here's the thing. I believe it's entirely possible that Maki and Toji could legit just dodge it. But of course, I know some people have issues with that. Curse speech is a AoE technique. But if they are able to resist actual soul manipulation and have general resistance to curses, even someone as powerful as Yuta's, I don't think his curse speech would be that effective because he's still technically wielding curses. So if it did tag him, it may hold them there for half a second. And then they just keep pushing. But of course, that's me, that's headcanon, and as Six says, it's not necessarily hard confirmed what that really means, and how much the resistance is, and how much it varies from body to body, person to person, stuff like that. And technique by technique, and obviously Yuta Kotsu has very high output and is very powerful. So it's still up in the air. I'll readily admit that. Curse speech is one of the only win cons I'd say Yuta definitively has over them, because of the vagueness of it and whether or not you believe they could dodge.
In its own section, that's another way Toji is probably resistant to Mahito's transfigurations. The last way only applies to Toji and Shibuya, and that's simply that Toji has no soul to transfigure. The soul in his body is the grandson's, but the body is Toji's. So I think all of this more than justifies Toji either being strong or having a strong soul. So moving on to number 2, being able to both perceive and hit the soul. This one is far more simple to explain than number 1. Maki's blade is a replica of the one Toji wielded first, the soul split katana. It ignores the hardness of everything and cuts the soul directly. But in order to use it at its full potential, the wielder must have a pair of eyes that can see the souls of inanimate objects. We see Toji use this thing to cut through Geto's toughest curse like nothing. Maki uses it to one-shot Naoya like nothing, and even someone without the ability to see curses like Daido could use it to do some damage. Number 3 is similarly easy to justify and ties back into Toji's curse resistance I was talking about, where Toji can literally choose to ignore entering a domain expansion if he wants to, and even if he does enter, the barrier can't recognize him because he has no cursed energy. so Mahito's sure hit won't work on Toji. See, most people try to be dishonest in front of this statement and say things like that was only Naoya's barrier and blah blah blah. But the thing about this is Mahito's barrier is used as the example for ignoring buildings in this context. So it should obviously apply to him as well in all other domains with the exception of Sukuna's. Aside from this though,
and now, here's the thing about Yuta's domain though. The thing is weird. I guess. That's the thing. If he implies Cleveland Dismantle to his domain, I guess it should recognize Maki and Toji. But like, I guess it should, right? Wouldn't the sure hit still be based around cursed energy? But I guess it would recognize everything. It's weird because of how Yuta's domain works. Like, I guess all the concrete and swords in his domain would be unaffected, even though they're inanimate objects or objects with cursed energy imbued into them. I don't know. I want to talk more about Yuta's domain and hypothetically how broken it could be and how he could get around certain things. That's a video.
It seems when Maki or Toji decide to enter a domain, they can do so wherever they want, as Mahito stabs Naoya in the back while still spawning in the domain. That wouldn't normally be a big deal, but when you wield a sword that negates durability, I think it becomes a big deal. Maki already landed a hit before even being fully in the domain. So with this massive disadvantage Mahito is at, is there a stat difference that could potentially allow him to fight with Toji and pull out a W? The answer is a simple no. While Mahito is a strong disaster curse, his best speed feats even prior to his nerf come from his fight with Yuji, where Yuji is consistently able to keep up with his speed and combat Mahito. Some people might try and argue Mahito holds back on Yuji, but as you can see from him saying he's going to imbue a strike with his maximum of cursed energy, that's probably not the case. And while it is true that Mahito can certainly grow stronger during a battle, that won't really make a difference if the battle is too short for him to grow from. Even when Mahito does grow in battle, it's rarely ever his speed or attack power that goes up, and is normally an expansion on his curse technique. Yuji just after Shibuya was getting stronger and better control over his curse energy, not to mention he hit a black flash on Mahito to end their fight, pushing him even further. Yuji then goes on to be weaker than Maki in the fight against Sukuna, and is said to be so by Sukuna. I mean, even if you want to say they're equal.
And notably, the crazy thing is, there is a massive gap between regular Yuji right before the Megana switch and liberated Yuji. It's clearly massive. Sukuna even notes there's a massive gap. Not to talk of the gap between liberated Yuji and post Shibuya Yuji, or liberated Yuji and fully healed Demon God Yuji, or they're like, you can keep going down the line of the massive gap in power that Mahito just, unfortunately, he's not even soft capped, he's hard capped at that because he doesn't fight anybody else. It's ironically enough similar to the Jogo issue, where Jogo's best feats are against fatigued people and people he doesn't scale to. That's unfortunate. Now I think a lot of the disaster curses have that. Like, Hanami's best scaling is against what? Toto and Goodwill Yuji? Dagon's best scaling is really pretty decent. You get some grade 1s, but like, grade 1s? By the back half of the series? Really? But
it doesn't get better because of Toji's soul splitting sword and resistances to Mahito's curse technique. I think now it's about time I brought up ISB Mahito, or True Form Mahito, because a lot of people think this makes a difference when it comes to this fight, but I'm here to tell you,
it literally doesn't. He has a soul split katana, which negates traditional durability, which is the main thing Inverted Spirit Body of whatever gives Mahito. I cannot fathom how people think this changes anything, especially when it's confirmed by Geigi. This doesn't actually increase his stats outside of durability, which is irrelevant in the Toji matchup. Listen well, but let me stop.
That it most certainly does not make a difference here. In Volume 15, there's an extra attached to the end of Chapter 132, which is the chapter directly following Mahito's defeat, that describes his new form in detail. Mahito's unbridled soul, 200% tougher than his original form, according to his own estimates. A binding vow further increases his toughness in exchange for halting his metamorphosis. As you can see from this statement, Mahito gets much more durable, but in terms of being faster or stronger, nothing really implies he gets that sort of amp to his abilities. He performs the same against Yuji, although he has extra appendages to help with that, but Yuji also only comments on Mahito's durability and how he's tougher than before. It even reminds him of his fight with Choso, then saying his attacks just don't reach him, which is clearly in reference to the fact they do no harm since we see the attacks landing. Now, in all fairness to Mahito, this was very effective against Yuji, since it's even stated at the bottom of the page here that if Itadori hadn't nailed him with Black Flash, Mahito would have torn him to shreds. But I'm sure why a durability boost wouldn't matter when talking about a guy who negates durability with the sword is extremely obvious. As far as if Toji does enter Mahito's domain, regardless of his resistances to the technique, Mahito does get an amp inside of his domain due to the environment, but sadly this difference isn't enough to cover the massive difference between their stats. I really don't even think it would get to this point, to be honest though. Toji isn't the one to kind of just play around. I imagine he'd try to end Mahito quickly, then move on to being a bum and not taking care of his children. All in all though, losing this fight isn't bad for Mahito. Toji is a really bad matchup against a lot of curse techniques because of his resistances, and I didn't even go over his precognition or anything that would throw the fight even further in his favor, so Toji wins.
Or inverted spirit heaven. And oh, white light. I've already watched that video too, you cannot deceive me. But, you know, this is undeniably a juicy, school-rum-delicious W video. Yeah, we had the exact same reasoning. Makes sense. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. It's just it's a stat gap plus a bad matchup. Which is what Toji is for a majority of the verse. Like, don't get me wrong. I legit think that's like Toji's whole purpose. He's meant to be a stat check and a matchup check. And Mahito just fails it horribly. It's unfortunate, but it'd be like that when it be like that. Especially when it be like that. But of course, if you want to check out the original video without all my unbelievable yapping, the link to this original video will be in the description down below. However, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave split souls in the comment section down below. As a thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 Patreon, $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, if you want to just leave a donation for your boy, you want to make a nice little quick one-off video request, the link to my Ko-Fi will be in the description down below. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That of the Pencil, writing off. I would like to give a thank you to all $3 members: O'Connor Plays, Greyhound, Atkins Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Querencia Atala, Red Wolf 4765, G Prosper, and Paris Arnold. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Marcus, Kevin, and Igneel. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo and Sick Addiction. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $10 members, Banana Phone and Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patron, ChinaDoll09, and I'd like to give another gargantuan gargantuan I have no idea what that word. Thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.